Good evening. You are with the Urban Debate here. I'm Sahar Zaman. Tonight, this is what we're discussing. To begin with, this is at a time when the country is facing heavy job losses, home budgets that have needed to be massively scaled down, and for those who have already started commuting, going back to open office spaces here, the biggest blow right now is the rise in fuel prices. It has come in at the worst possible time. And this is a record high that we're reporting in several cities. Let's get you some of those details. The prices that have come in. In the national capital, petrol is at an absolute record high. It is currently at 84.20 rupees per litre. In Mumbai, diesel has skyrocketed at rupees 81 per litre. The government has met on this issue as well on what can be done to bring in that relief to the consumers here, to crack a formula on how the prices can come down. But there is no final decision on that yet. While this hike currently this time is essentially because of the international crude price per barrel that has climbed up, what can be done here by the government is what we're discussing tonight. And to understand that better, before we throw this open to our panelists, our experts here, let's also understand what is the breakup of petrol pricing that eventually makes it up to the final cost. One, that is the base price. We're taking the specific example of what is being reported in Delhi today. The base price that we have up on your screens here, the minimal freight price that we see, and in the further breakdown that you see, the price that is charged to the dealers, and the two big chunks here being the excise duty that comes in from the central government, which is 32 rupees per litre, 32.98 in fact. The dealer commission, once again, on a price of 3.67. But the other big chunk is the VAT, which comes in from state governments, is 19.32 per litre. And that adds up, all of that adds up to the final price of what we're seeing today, as what is being reported today here in Delhi is 84.20 rupees per litre. It's important to understand this breakdown, which is where we'll know where to get that relief from, on what respective governments here can do. Let's throw this open to our panelists tonight. We have Mr. Vishwa Pathak, who's the spokesperson of the BJP, Professor Ajoy Kumar, Chair Professor of the Institute of Social Sciences, former professor, as well as the Chairperson of Center for Economic Studies and Planning at the JNU. We have S.C. Tripathi, former Oil Secretary with us, and Dr. Ajoy Kumar, Congress spokesperson. Let's first go across here to Professor Kumar. Thank you all of you for being with us. Good evening to you, Professor Kumar. To begin with, how easy is it going to be for respective players here to work towards bringing down prices?
So, the deficit in the center's budget is very high. It's already climbed to 135% of the annual target. By November, it's climbing further because, we've had GST losses in the months of April, May, June, July, when we collected much less than what was targeted. And the direct tax collections are much lower. And the government, has squeezed expenditures quite as much as it could, but still the fiscal deficit is rising. So this has been one source through which the government has raised additional funds. And the state's position has also been very bad because the states, not only get a share of the GST, but also a share of the total tax collection of the center. So when the center's tax collections come down, then the state share also comes down. And therefore, the states are in very dire circumstances. So both states and center have it, in their mind that they can raise funds through the increase in prices of petroleum products. So this is why, you've had this problem of the prices going up, but it's inflationary. And it will, slow down the recovery of the economy because when the inflation hits, people's consumption gets hit. And when demand already is slow, and when demand slows down further, they will have further problems. So petroleum goods are basic goods which are used in all production and everything that is there. And therefore, instead of using petroleum goods, the government needed to use something else to raise the revenues that it needs. And I think, also, the non-tax revenue is going to be down because the disinvestment is much less than what was targeted. So all told, the government is in a bad position. So it needed to really think through where to borrow the funds from. And I've been suggesting that the government needs to float COVID bonds. Through COVID bonds, perhaps, the government could have raised funds from the banks because the banks have a lot of liquidity. 8 lakh crore is being deposited with the, RBI, and the RBI is saying, please don't deposit, give it out to the businesses. Businesses don't need money because the economy is still not revived back to 2019. So all told, government could have borrowed more funds rather than raising these taxes because they are inflationary. They hurt, the consumer, they hurt the producers, and overall will slow down the recovery of the economy.
Mr. S.C. Tripathi, this is something that we get to hear very often, that this is a very bad stage here as far as state government, central government is concerned. But respective state and central governments are still sitting on a better buffer compared to individuals, people's, citizens' home budgets. This is currently a huge crisis here. I mean, we got in responses through the day on how commuters are being impacted. One of them told us that with a salary of 20,000 rupees per month, 5,000 that goes in only into the fuel.
Yes, this is a common man's consumption item. There are several crore two-wheelers and almost a crore four-wheeler on the roads. And two-wheelers basically are lower middle class, and four-wheelers also now are middle class. So common man consumption, and diesel, in fact, is public transport is very critically dependent on diesel. Therefore, this is a public good. But the problem is, as has been pointed out by the previous speaker, the government's resources are in very poor condition. And due to the slowdown and the COVID impact on the economy, the revenues have been very, very low. In fact, it was a silver lining in the cloud that the crude oil prices dropped in the month of March, April onwards, right up to August, September. So what the government did was to raise excise duty on petrol by about 12 rupees a litre, and therefore it comes to about 33 rupees a litre, and on diesel by about 14 rupees, so it comes to about 31, 32 rupees a litre. You see, let me remind you that in 2014, when the crude oil prices were higher, the excise duty on diesel was only 3 rupees and on petrol was only about 10.5 rupees. So from that, we have traveled a long distance. Right. Now it is 33 rupees a litre on petrol and 32 rupees a litre on diesel. One does not mind it because, at that time, the government's fiscal situation was so bad that they were not able to get adequate amount of GST or other taxes, and therefore, when the crude oil prices fell, it could be well justified. But now the crude oil prices are rising. Today, the Brent crude has been $54, $55 a barrel, and now the GST has picked up. In fact, in December month, the GST was almost highest. So this is a time when government should recalibrate and bring down the excise duty. And similarly, the state should bring down the VAT. On petrol, as you have pointed out, you see the basic price is between 25 to 30 rupees a litre. Perhaps today it is 27 rupees a litre. Then 33 rupees is the excise duty, and about 20 rupees is VAT, and 3.5 rupees is the dealer commission. Dealer commission can also be reduced somewhat. So on a basic price of 27 rupees, the sale price is 84 rupees. So this is one commodity where on the base price, the other taxes are more than 100%. And in a country like India, where the consumption, the fuel consumption and energy consumption has to keep going up, this becomes a big deterrent besides having inflationary effect. So my suggestion would be that it should be recalibrated and government should gradually bring down its excise duty, and the state should also bring down their VAT.
Dr. Ajoy Kumar of the Congress here, in your view, the Congress, of course, along with other opposition parties here, has criticized the government in the two hikes in excise duty that we'd seen. This was in early March, which was just before the lockdown last year, and then soon after the lockdown ended, which was then in the month of May last year. What are we expecting state governments with the Congress, which are under the Congress, to be doing about this? Is it just the role of the central government, or is it for the state governments to be working along with this on this as well?
No, look, there are two main issues. I think the first main issue is, I don't know if you remember prior to 2014, what then Chief Minister, now Prime Minister Modi was saying on fuel prices. He said that in 2013, the lack of trust in government leads to increase in prices. The rupee is falling, so the government is not trustworthy internationally, and that's why the prices are high. So first of all, the government should accept that there is no trust in the government, because there's the only reason why the petrol and diesel prices are so high. And we are only quoting what Mr. Modi has said, exactly on what prices of why the petrol and diesel prices are high. The second issue is that the states are anyway in very, very bad shape. Now the states are not. Now the states have to fill the gap of the shortage in their GST collection by taking loans. So it's impossible. The state is not even able to execute the basic services which they're supposed to do. The leverage to the states are much, much lesser than the government of India. Much, 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 much lesser. So you don't pay the states the GST and state collection, and you're not even sticking to the agreement you had with the states. If you remember, when the GST was implemented, there was an agreement that for 5 years that you will ensure a certain increase year on year. That was a guarantee which was given by the central government. Now not only are they going back on that, they are also saying that, look, we can't make up the deficit, so you have to take loans and etc. And the states were bullied into it. So to expect any state, I don't know whether it is not only Congress states, it's whether it is whether it's BJP states, whether it is non-Congress states or other opposition governments. I think the play for the state is absolutely zero. So the majority of the component, the fact is that the majority of the tax component is the central government. But look at it, gas cylinder. 500 rupees, 497 odd in 2014, it has reached to touch 700 rupees. I mean, the increase is over base price of over 50 to somewhere close to 50 to 40%. So the middle class and the lower income group are severely affected by petrol and diesel and gas price increase. The government has got no clue. And one thing, I'll just finish off with, the reason why we are there is not the COVID lockdown and all those are challenges. But the major reason is the total abysmal management of the finance of this country. From 2014, we might keep telling stories about it. We might keep thinking we're living in a la-la land. But the fact is that this government has destroyed the economy and the backbone of this country, whether it was demonetization, whether it was the most illogical lockdown, whether it was destroying and now it's attacking the farmers. So systematically, this government has destroyed the economy, and then to say that since the government doesn't have money, we need to depend on it and take on the revenue deficit by raising the petrol and diesel prices is a joke, because the person who's responsible. I just want to.
Dr. Ajoy Kumar, got your point there. This is, of course, raising up several factors and entirely laying the blame on the central government. So let's get it on what can be really done. This is as far as the central government. National spokesperson of the BJP, Mr. Vishwas Pathak, with us here as well. Mr. Pathak, please respond. There are several questions. Essentially, we're going to further break it down on the other players and what the other players here can do. But when we have the central government having met on this in the past, having met just yesterday as well, but there is no decision on what can be done. What are these multiple meetings that keep happening regarding fuel prices here, but nothing comes out of it?
I'll respond to all. See, number one, 2 years back on your same channel, we discussed on same rates at Delhi and Mumbai that it is unprecedented high. Today also it is the same situation. But you remember 2 years back, rates have again gone down. Today's situation is again about this demand and supply. Because of COVID, the requirement of crude oil or the demand of the crude oil had gone down, and therefore production was also going down. Today, demand is going up because of the lots of activities happening all across the world, and therefore demand for crude oil or petroleum products is also going up. Because the demand and supply is not getting matched, this kind of fluctuation is there. But I'm very sure that this fluctuation will come down, prices will go back to its normal, and things will be normalized. Point number two, see, India is the only country, while dealing with COVID, they give utmost importance to the lives of the public, that economic growth and everything. And that's why the collection of GST and all other things went down in April, May, June, July. And that shortfall is really a burden and a pressure on the fiscal discipline. So is the case with the state also. But this government is determined to help these people. This government will help if required. Like in last 5 years, Mr. Modi, as well as like in Maharashtra, we had a government of Mr. Devendra Fadnavis. We reduced prices on 2 counts. So if it is required, this government will not hesitate to reduce it. Thirdly, and most importantly, you give the breakup of all this taxes and all that thing. See, entire world and all the countries in the world, they have got their pattern of collecting taxes through these excise products, or rather petroleum products. Otherwise, you have to ask yourself why there is no 0 rupees per liter petrol available at UAE or Saudi. There also it is being sold at 30 rupees, 40 rupees. In many developed countries, petrol and diesel is being sold at 120 to 170 rupees range. It means there has been a construct of collection of the revenue from time to time. So is the case with India also. So you cannot change it overnight. However, as far as this situation is concerned, this is going to be normalized very shortly, because this production of the oil has been ramped up, and the moment this demand and supply matches, this price will normalize to its basic price
Mr.
again.
Mr. Pathak, you're saying that the situation will normalize basis what the international price on the barrel here is, but we are looking at solutions that should come in from within the government of India here, but from within the state governments. If there was a steep climb in excise of what we'd seen in March and May last year, there should be a climb down on that front as well.
No, certainly, whenever this exchequer position improves, like GST collection has gone up unprecedented high last month. But there is a shortfall of April, May, June and July. That shortfall has also to be made up. We have to ensure that our economy is back to normal.
GST collections weren't doing very well even before the COVID.
One second, ma'am.
Correct. Therefore, I'm telling you, see, this is the only government which has not enhanced the tax rates of direct taxes as well as indirect taxes. Indirect taxes, which used to be 23% average, has gone to 18%. So despite of raising, without raising these taxes, this country has witnessed the growth of 8% year on year. From 2 trillion, economy has come to 3 trillion under the regime of Mr. Modi.
Excuse me.
Yes, Ajoy Kumar, please come in here, because this is, of course, number crunching and playing around numbers here that would not necessarily have our viewers understand on what is well within the hands. But Ajoy Kumar, I want to ask you as well regarding what's happening in your state in Maharashtra, which is currently taking up the maximum bracket here of VAT, which is VAT on not just petrol at 26%, the basic price, the transport cost, as well as on excise duty. So when you say that the state coffers are suffering as well, there can be a joint climb down both from the states and the central government, which is very similar to what we'd seen in 2018. The central government requested the state governments. Some agreed, which was Maharashtra, which was Telangana. Then the central government pulled down part of its excise duty as well. This was a joint effort, and this is something that is required today as well in these very, very crucial times for people.
No,
yes, Maharashtra can do that.
So one of the things, Mr. Pathak has tried to defend the position, and I appreciate his perspective. But why it is so fallacious is couple. Why is there a huge shortage? Because you gave these corporates 1,40,000 crore of tax benefits first. You ran short of it. Forget income tax. You gave corporates a 1,40,000.
That is a record for economy.
No, let me complete, sir.
That is a record for the economy.
I didn't complete, sir. Let me complete. Mr. Pathak, have the courtesy. I don't interrupt, so you don't interrupt, please. I don't interrupt when you speak, so please have the courtesy, sir. Let me then you challenge
Yes,
my option.
Dr. Kumar, please
Yeah.
complete your point.
Yeah. The second issue is, why is it that Pakistan is selling it at close to 50 rupees, if I remember the newspaper article. The most expensive neighbor is that was Nepal, which was selling it at a lower cost. If I remember,
Why Hong Kong
Bangladesh
is selling at
close to
140?
65. One sec, sir,
Why
let me
Hong Kong,
complete,
Australia
sir.
is selling
Sir,
at
Mr.
140?
Pathak,
No,
please
you
have
need to
the
tell
courtesy to
also
listen.
why
The
Hong Kong,
BJP,
Australia,
you
they're
know,
selling
Mr.
at
again, the
Pathak,
140.
Mr.
BJP.
Pathak, please don't
So there is
interrupt
the
here.
Petrol.
Mr. Pathak, I'll come back to you,
Belligerent
please.
guys here, relax. I don't interrupt when you speak. Have the courtesy, sir.
No, no,
Please
you're
have
giving
the
wrong
courtesy.
information.
I don't interrupt you when you speak. Have the courtesy when I speak. Did I interrupt you, sir? So please have extended me that courtesy. I really appreciate that. So the
Yes,
issue is,
Dr. Kumar, please go
so
ahead.
issue is you mismanage the economy. And why the states is because I'm telling you, the states are taking loan from the government has asked the state to take loan. The government of India is not taking a loan then. So the question again is they are hammering the states by bleeding the strangulating the states. The states have no leverage, and they are distinguished people on the panel. They are professionals. Professor Arun Kumar is there. The former petroleum secretary is there. My question is very simple. Why did the deficit happen? 2 lakh crores you were supposed to get to disinvestment. You didn't get the 2 lakh crores to disinvestment. Whose mismanagement is it? Is it ours or is it the government of India? 1.5 lakh crores you gave it through the tax benefit to the corporates. And that is why you are having this deficit. And that is why the poor man is paying a price. And forget the demonetization and everything. So 2 lakh crores is the disinvestment target. Where is it? And that is why you continuously, so first accept that you don't know how to run the economy. Then you have to find out solutions and then get experts to run it. But the problem is the experts have no respect, the experts are not very much liked by the present dispensation. But I would really request, even people you don't like should be able to help you out into understanding how to fix this situation. But let us work together. But the fact is, ma'am, is that the government
All right, so Dr. Kumar, once again, you're saying there's nothing in the hands of the states here because they themselves have been asked to take loans by the central government on the shortfall of the GST and the returns. Professor Kumar, in your understanding, because Professor Kumar, we wanted to have this discussion keeping in mind the plight of the people. This is no small matter. This is no easy matter. This is climbing prices at a very difficult time to really just break this down in simple terms on how people's home budget has been impacted by this. And if this is how the price rises on the barrel in international rates here, what will the government do? And what can the government do here? Professor Kumar, help us understand that better so we can also then further ask more pointed questions to the government on what they aren't doing.
So, the problem is not demand and supply, because demand and supply is international, and that demand and supply would have raised international prices. They have gone up from the low of about $30 to about $54 now, no doubt, but they're not at what they used to be earlier, $84. So the reason why the prices are higher is taxation, as your data suggests. So therefore, clearly it's a question of revenues that the government is trying to raise using this. But as I tried to argue, this is a very basic commodity. This goes into production of everything. Diesel is used in agriculture. Diesel is used for transportation. Diesel is used in generating power, wherever there's a power shortage.
Yes.
So when you have basic prices rising, then all prices rise because, energy is required in everything. So in my judgment, the solution has to be long-term as well as short-term. In the short term, you're definitely going to have a deficit, which you'll have to raise through non-basic goods prices. Don't raise taxes on basic items, like petroleum and diesel. If you have to raise some taxes, then you try to raise through direct taxes. Indirect taxes are regressive. They fall more on the poor people. So if you raise direct taxes, but as the Congress spokesperson has said, we've already lowered corporate tax rates. So corporate tax collection has not been very buoyant. Recently, direct tax, also in income tax, has not been very buoyant. We need to raise the buoyancy there. But there is a problem there. So we need to therefore raise funds through, what I suggested, COVID bonds. Rather than raising taxes on, basic items, try to raise, funds through the COVID bonds. That would be one way which would be non-inflationary. It would not affect the pocket of the common man also. Second is, it's a long-term issue. What price should be charged and how much public transportation should we have? so that the private vehicles become less in the urban areas and the rural areas. So if we encourage public transportation, then, as happens in many of the advanced countries, you can have a higher price of the petroleum goods without it affecting, the common person. So I think the long-term issues are there. Short-term issues are also there. I think we have to keep track of both the long-term and the short-term. And finally, I would say if our petroleum goods prices rise, then the recovery will slow down, because at this point, demand is lacking. Major components of the services sector have not been able to revive. For instance, your hotels, your restaurants, your travel, tourism, major components have not revived. So demand still remains short. Production still remains short compared to 2019. And if you allow the inflation to go up, then the demand will remain short. Your recovery will be stalled.
Right.
So therefore, it's in the interest of the government to see that the economy revives. And for that, you need to keep the petroleum goods prices down.
Mr. S.C. Tripathi, to what extent are you in agreement with this? And should we still be looking at the argument of this being a revenue cause for the government? Because we have seen the government, and we've been repeating ourselves in what we've seen in the past year, when there were revenue issues before COVID hit economy, there are revenue issues after COVID hit economy, before in March, later in May, and in both instances, there was a huge climb in the excise duty.
I have spent many years in finance department of state and center. No finance secretary and finance minister wants to reduce the excise duty and VAT on petroleum products, because it is the easiest tax to collect, no collection charge, no leakage worthwhile in this. So no finance secretary and finance minister want. This is the easiest. And no finance minister wants to expand the tax basket because he has this easy thing to tax. And you see, 2-3 years ago, we were discussing whether to bring petroleum products under GST. In GST, the maximum tax rate is 28%, whereas here on diesel and petrol, you are charging more than 150%. So instead of bringing down the rates so as to get into GST, we are creating a situation where it will become almost impossible to bring petroleum products like diesel, petrol, etc. Under GST. So what one has to do is, I understand that this year the economy is in trouble. Resources are very scarce there. But now things are improving. As I said, GST last month was highest ever. So now it is a time to recalibrate the taxes. If the central government reduces excise duty, states' VAT is percentage. It's ad valorem. So if that will come down slightly, then the states can also reduce maybe after a while, because their position is even worse than the central government's position. So that is a way to go about. There should be a roadmap that in 6 months, in 1 year, they will bring down the price, the taxes like this. Immediately, they should bring down the taxes by at least between 2 to 5 rupees a litre.
Mr. Pathak, let's have the government take some brave decisions here. The government meets on this issue, but doesn't work in the direction that can really help people. These are easy taxes to collect here, and we don't see the government working in that direction.
See, before responding, whatever serious allegations have been made by my Congress spokesperson friend, just let me remind you, in 2008, we had a finance minister, Mr. Chidambaram, and Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh. Our GDP growth has gone down to 4%. Our inflation was about 10%. So there are issues. One need to understand. As far as this government is concerned, again,
Mr. Pathak,
I'm telling you.
Let's understand what can be done today, please. I don't want to go back 10 years. No one wants to go back 10 years on this. We are dealing with our wallets today, not in 2008.
This government, headed by Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi, understand the problems of poor people. That's why for last 6 years, look at the fiscal discipline. For last 6 years, without raising tax rates, we have achieved economy from 2 trillion to 3 trillion. This shows that they know the products of fiscal discipline. They understand the problem, and if required, this government will roll back the prices also. In last 6 years, 2 times it has happened. It has happened in Maharashtra also. Now, point is that whether government of Maharashtra, which is having Congress government, are going to do that. They also have to contribute. They also have to come up with a solution. As far as our government is concerned, government
But Mr.
will
Pathak,
certainly come out with a
there are
solution.
people living outside Maharashtra as well. I'm really talking about the entire country. I'm talking about other metros. I'm talking about other states here, wherein which not just with the role of individual states, the central government has the biggest role here to play. Which is why I'm asking: can we have the government today take some brave decisions on this?
Certainly, government will take some brave decision. However, I think this is a temporary transitionary stage. Prices are going to get normalized because oil companies have ramped up their production. Demand supply will match. Prices will come down. 2 years back also, similar kind of situation arose. We discussed on same lines. But look at the intervention by government and normalization of demand and supply ratio. Prices had gone down. Similar situation will arise here this time also.
All right, that's of course really pinning our hopes in keeping our fingers crossed, and hopefully this is going to work. But in the intervening time, till this works here, these are still a few more weeks to be dealing with very high petrol prices if the international prices don't come down. Till then, we of course hoping the central government, the state governments would work on this jointly, because that is something which will work at the end of the day. That is something which will show results in prices climbing down. Let's have the central government reach out to the state governments once again, as we had seen in 2018, 3 years ago, and work on this together. Let's have this happen in 2021 as well.